kind of is like an acoustic, kind of with my band of, Mackenzie and McAvoy and co. Mine's kind of all electric, and I think different rules apply, particularly for Americans. When you're working with somebody that good, and then all the other actors kind of feed on that. He's proper world class.
I know we can both be
a bit much. You're gonna kill us. What? He went dead. Mom?
The original film came out just a couple of years ago. I was wondering why now was the right time for a remake.
Well, the film's still there and it still exists and people can still go and see it. So I didn't want to make the same movie. But I love Christian's movie, but I thought also there was an opportunity to make to take the themes of his music and of his movie and the setup of it, but to slightly push in a slightly different direction, to explore a few different things. Christian's movie is relentlessly, brilliantly bleak, whereas this film plays in a slightly different key, if you know what I mean, and by relocating it to the UK, actually I've just been talking to lots of other outlets, like in Italy, and I've been saying, when I set this movie, I said to Blumhouse, I want it in the UK, right? And I said, because I know I can lean into the UK-ness of it, the humour. And they were like, well, how is it? And I go, like, it's British humour. If you're British, you'll understand, And it's like with Paddy and all of that. And it's like, so I sort of felt that cultural collision between Americans and Brits. And there's the cliche that as Brits we're all really repressed and Americans are really kind of outgoing. But there are a lot of Brits like Paddy. It's that kind of Falstaffian tradition of sort of really kind of, the guy in the pub that, the guy in, in the play Jerusalem, any of those things, the kind of the character that's sort of really rambustuous and, and sort of, holds forth in the pub and whatever. And so I thought there was a real opportunity to sort of, and with these American characters coming into this British world, to take it to a slightly different place because, Christian's movie is brilliantly about the constraints of social propriety. But my film kind of, gets about 3/4 of the way through to where Christian's film ends. And then I sort of felt, well, once society has broken down and you've got a gun in your face, I don't think what's underneath the surface is now above the surface. And I think different rules apply, particularly for Americans, and that notion of, what do you do? And I think for my characters, it's important that they at least try to run, to hide, to fight. I don't think it's a portrayal of the themes of Christian's movie. I just think it goes to a different place, and I think it should with those characters. But also, when they do try, I think I wanted to go, look, most of us are really bad at confrontation. If I'm on the tube and somebody's behaving really badly or weirdly, I kind of just look at my book, I don't call them out in that context, but you kind of, you get all tense, and if someone comes and tries to get in your face in the pub, how do you deal with it? And so I sort of felt, okay, I wanted these characters to try, when faced with mortal danger, to find a way out, but they're pretty cack-handed about it, particularly him, and particularly him who has followed this kind of weird toxic masculine mentor saying you could be this kind of guy. And then when it comes down to it, he's a bit crap, and actually his wife is better. So, do you know what I mean? I just sort of thought, there's a, look, you can, look, I ask the same questions when people go, oh, they're redoing that, or whatever. But at the same time, I thought, there's a real opportunity here. And yeah, like if Christian's movie plays kind of, is like an acoustic, kind of with my band of, Mackenzie and McAvoy and co, mine's kind of all electric, if you know what I mean. And so that I think they're just different things. And I think it's great, that they can both exist.
Yeah, and that obviously comes through most in the kind of final act, which is a lot more action-packed. How did you go about constructing that and kind of bringing that action through, but still keeping it in that grounded zone that the original?
It was interesting. I'll give you an example. So the scene with the Molotov cocktail, when they throw the Molotov cocktail out, we shot it, and then I was unhappy with how we shot it because I said they sort of were too competent, too almost militaristic. And so what you see in the film now, I said, let's, and I had to find time in the schedule. I said, I really want to reshoot that and make them really incompetent and a bit crap. And, because, we're not all like MacGyver in the A-Team. You know, it's like the very idea of trying to do that, and then they try and do it. The one thing they try, they fail at, because actually that's kind of how we are as normal people. You know, they're not suddenly Navy SEALs in the third act. And that notion, they're all just, and when Mackenzie does acts of violence, she's not like, yeah, it's more like, oh, you know, oh my God. And, you know, when she hits people, she's got a pair of rubber marigold gloves on. You know, it's kind of bathos. It's undercutting all those notions of sort of heroism and all of that. So, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting way to continue character and theme all the way through, you know, not just it being kind of clockwork.
And obviously we talked about the differences from the original film. What were the kind of key themes that you wanted to keep into this new version?
I mean, you know, very much the notion of, you know, when do we call people out on bad behavior, I suppose, and the social contract. And I think it's something we all wrestle with, you know. We were talking about it yesterday. If you're in the cinema and somebody's on their mobile phone and talking or whatever, even next to you, and they're scrolling and the light's on, do you go to them, look, excuse me, or can you shut up? And we all had a debate, because some of us were like, yeah, I want to, but I'd probably just sit there and suffer, or, you know, because you don't know how they're going to react, or, you know, they're going to pull a knife, or even if it's not that, are you just going to get aggression? So the next half hour of watching your movie is spoiled because you're confronted, you know what I mean? It's all that sort of stuff. So it's really ripe. I think we live in an anxious age where none of us really, you know, the social rules are always changing, and particularly when you get to a certain age and you're like, oh, okay, what do I say? And that's self-censoring. So that was sort of felt incredibly resonant to me. And I thought I could take some of those themes and just really lean into them and also explore the humor of that, you know, like all the stuff. I think, you know, difference between, you know, Christian's film is incredibly kind of austere and brilliantly austere, whereas my film is, I think, quite funny. I've sat with audiences and they really enjoy the humor of it. And so that's deliberate. I wanted it to be funny because I think there's a kind of cultural cringe, and then, you know, and there's a sort of, yeah, it's sort of, is this funny or is this, should I be laughing? You know, I think is part of the pleasure.
And obviously at the centre of that is James McAvoy, and who's kind of seems to be having a great time in that role. Did you kind of ask him and the rest of the cast to study the previous film, or
no, I don't. I never do that, and it's entirely their own choice. And actually, I don't think they watched the film until after. Well, I know they didn't, because, you know, nobody, and it's just an unconscious thing. As an actor, they know the film exists, but they, you know, they don't want to be, for good or bad, in any way influenced by somebody else's performance. So it was. You know, I know James was very adamant. As look, no, I'm not going to watch it. It won't help me. I want to find my own interpretation of your screenplay, you know. And so, but you know, Christian was an EP, an executive producer. So he, you know, he came to the set, and you know, we talked, and yeah, no, it was great.
And did yourself and the team kind of look at any other James McAvoy performances and think, you know, this is our guy to bring this sort of crazed character to life?
I had seen, I mean, people talk a lot about Split, but for me it wasn't Split. I had seen Filth, the Irvin Welsh adaptation, and that character is so reprehensible, but with a lesser actor you would have been turned off very quickly. And James brought sympathy and also pathos to the character, and I thought that was a real higher wire act. And that, you know, look, I've admired James for a long time as an actor, and someone I wanted to work with, and it was great. He was the first and only person I went to for the part of Paddy, and he said yes. And then we sat down and we talked all about the themes, and, you know, what we were trying to do, and the toxic masculinity and the mentorship, and, you know, all of that. And then the film was about finding the level, it was just tiny calibrations, you know, all the way through. Was a little bit more, a little bit less, you know, what do we let out? You know, what do we conceal, what do we reveal? And it was a blast, you know. It was, when you're working with somebody that good, and then all the other actors kind of feed on that. Yeah, I mean, he's proper world class.